The Road Accident Fund is currently holding a media briefing in Centurion. Now, RAF is expected to announce the annual report for the 2023-2024 financial year, which will include its annual performance results and the annual financial statements. RAF has taken this extraordinary step. This is to disprove the campaign by attorneys and private interests who have been shut out of milking the institution. Now, these interest groups are campaigning to remove the board, now CEO and the executive management. We take you there to this briefing live.
Opens its doors for the first time in 1946. Over this period, it has had about 7 commissions of inquiry into it. The last one being the Sexual Commission in 2002. And called Melamed and all sorts of commissions that we have. The Road Accident Fund started as an insurance until 1986, where it changed into a social benefit scheme, where it uses the fuel levy to fund itself, and therefore the amount of fuel levy that we collect is the revenue that we have at the Road Accident Fund. Nothing more, nothing less. It is important that when you look at this thing, you state what the problem statement for the Sexual Commission was. It says the system is financially unsustainable. This was around 1999, 2000 period. The system was financially unsustainable, and measures needed to be taken to achieve a system that would be affordable and stable in the long term, yet be able to offer a reasonable set of benefits. That's what Centurion says about this. The system needed to be made more efficient. That's reducing the high cost at that time in terms of time, effort and expertise incurred in the process of delivering the benefits. And the system had to be more effective. That's avoiding shortcomings, anomalies, and inequities at that time. Now, we had the RAF Act since 1996. Those that are in the know will tell you that in 1986, this thing collapsed in the hand of the private sector. So it must be known that this collapse in the hands of the private sector in 1986. I think at that time it had about 3 commissions already. Every other 20 years or 10 years, there would be a commission of inquiry into why this thing is not sustainable. But I think Judge Fisher could not have captured it more better than I would when she delivered a judgment on the 29th of July, 2024, where she knows from the history, long and past, and more recent, it is clear that it cannot be in dispute that the current board, as many of its predecessors, inherited a fund which was insolvent. Bertelsmann's J in Ketsekele versus the Road Accident Fund remarked that whomsoever should manage the RAF is saddled with an inheritance damnosa, a cursed inheritance that would be doomed to failure. So I want you to paint a picture of this, and it's quite important that you paint this picture, and I think this Ketsekele judgment becomes very important. I think people must go and read it in the context of the contemporary issues. The RAF's problems or its challenges are not contemporary in nature, they are historic. They are historic in a lot of ways. But today we want to give a briefing on our performance. Having worked with the team, the board, the ministry, and all the other stakeholders to deliver these results. So we want to thank all those people that have assisted us to arrive here. Contrary to popular belief, we also thank the lawyers, or the legal fraternity, for the work we continue to do in saving South Africans, because as we have this act as it is today, lawyers are at the core of assisting us in delivering that. And of course, I mean, we know what the majority do, we know what the minority do. It's not for us to cast aspersions about decisions of the claimant who they would want to use to prosecute a claim, as it's stated in Section 19C. So I'm gonna just go through the background and all that. I think I've gone there. I've given a context of what, when we give you this presentation, you'll see. But I think what is most important, of course, is the key performance indicators for the year. We still have got no increase in the fuel levy. I think let's go to slide number 6. Let's move on. Yeah. The fuel levy keeps on being R2.18. At least since 2021-22. So it has not increased over the last 3 years. Last year, the year under reporting being the 3rd year, and this year in 2024-25, still we have not seen the increase in the fuel levy. You can look at it in inflation-adjusted terms. It means that it has reduced to about R1.93 in real terms, meaning you take out the inflation out of that. But what is important to look at is a thing called the short-term debt, the RNYP. When we started at the end of that financial year, it had peaked at about 19 billion, and at the end of that financial year, it was 16.23 billion rands. We are excited to announce that we have managed to reduce this debt to about 8.271 billion. So it's almost half of what it was when we started. What is this short-term debt? Is the money we owe to claimants that we can't pay, and this is what is subjected to 180 days, as people would put it. I'm happy to also announce that that amount of 8.271 was also lower in terms of aging than it was, meaning less than the 180 days that we expect it to be. So we give you the projection of 51.4 billion. So if we did nothing, we were going to be at 51.4 billion in terms of projections in this financial year. What does 51.4 billion mean? It means RAF would have simply received its revenue, and that whole revenue would be less than the RNYP, which is the short-term debt. Now, that would have been a disaster. So we have averted that disaster. The third one is the most contentious issue, which is the legal costs. We sit with legal costs of 3.899 billion. You can see that when we started in 1920, that was sitting at 9.4 billion. So we paid lawyers 9.43 billion, and that has been reduced to 3.89 billion this financial year. Over the during the time of the new strategy, we have saved about 24 billion rands in legal costs. The backlog, you would see that it has increased slightly by 1.2%. The previous year it was reduced by about 7.4%. And one of the most important aspects as well is claims settled by agreement. What do we mean? It means this was supposed to go to court. It didn't go to court. We agreed to settle with either the attorney or the claimant. And this is at 81.9%. We give you a background of where it started. When we started, it was around 61.2%. Now, there is an uproar where people say, no, the RAF is blocking the courts. That is something that you must look at and see whether it's us that intend on taking the courts or not. But we must know that South African, the Road Accident Fund, its origins are based on delict. Delict is the law of damages. I repeat this. You cannot sue someone outside the court. It just doesn't happen. When someone says, I will sue you, we know he says, I'm going to take you to court. There's no one who sues someone outside the court. So the reality is that if it's based on delict, which is suing each other for damages, it will end up in court one way or another if we don't agree. And we do not think that there's a social benefit scheme that can ever be based on delict. Imagine having to sue the state for your own social benefits. We are the only one that does that. I suppose even globally that's the case. Now, we give you there now I don't know why we have moved far. I thought we were still on slide 6. Can we go back there? Yeah, let's proceed to the next one. That is just the fuel levy, LCDs, and I must add this. If at all we did not change the model, we never got an increase in the fuel levy, the RAF will just simply have stopped functioning. The RAF would have simply have collapsed. Our predecessors would tell you that they have never experienced this where the fuel levy has not been increased for this long. But we have managed to keep the RAF floating even under circumstances where the fuel levy has not increased. And I think if you look at the RNYP over time, next slide, I think it's better in pictures than what I say. You can see that this has increased to about 16 billion. It was projected to be 17. The next year, 25, we achieved 14. The next year, 36, we achieved 9. The next year, 51, we achieved 9.3. Again, the next year, 51, we are sitting at 8.27 billion, which is an indication that over time we have managed to reduce this short-term debt. Our view is that we must get to zero as quickly as possible, but you must understand this in the context of where we are not getting any increase in the fuel levy. So you must understand that we manage that by lowering costs and making sure that we use this cost to either pay claimants. You'd see the amount that we are proud that as this team we have managed to reduce cost, but also paid more to the claimant. This is just, the next one is an indication of where the fuel levy sits in real terms. So in inflation adjusted terms, you would see where it sits. And of course, we plot that also against the RNYP, where you will see that the RNYP over period is actually reducing, notwithstanding the fuel levy reduction in real terms. The legal cost projections. This is an indication. Next slide. This is the projections of the fuel levy. The legal costs. The do-nothing scenario was going to say in 2030-31 we would have easily shot up 80 billion in legal costs at that point. And I must also emphasize that part of the RNYP, that RNYP, when it was projected on inflationary increases to be at 51 billion. This projection in legal costs, if we did nothing, that's where we would sit. We would have been in this 23-24 above 20 billion. They would have doubled by now, these legal costs. So the drive to reduce legal costs as part of the administrative cost has helped us to get where we are. As I say, it's better in pictures. The next slide. I've spoken about the legal cost over time in this new model, and I've said to you, we have cumulatively saved the RAF and South Africa 24 billion over 4 years. And you can see it. I mean, there's been growing. It started to reduce in 1920 through our interventions. And it's squaring up around 3-4 billion, between 3 and 4 billion. So something that at some time at the peak it was 10.6 billion. We have managed to reduce that to that. And of course, there is an issue around growth, change in backlogs over time under the new model. And this is where we have not performed that well, according to us. Because we had set ourselves to say 3 years and old claims and older claims, we set ourselves a target of 20%, and I think we achieved 16.9. It is 2 years in a row that we have missed that. And we'll explain. Part of it is the documents that are there at the RAF. We do not have enough information to make an offer. So that has grown over the period, but you can see that it's stabilizing from that point of view as well. This is claims settled by agreement. You can see that it has risen sharply over the period from about 56% during the new model, because our view is that we said when we began that Professor Henny Klopper said that 99.6% of all claims never end up in front of a judge. And the question was, so why litigate? So the aim was to make sure that we litigate less and settle more claims, and that's the drive that we have within the RAF. Now we can go to the summary of the organizational performance. That is a pictorial depiction of that. You can see that there is an increase in the fuel levy from the volumes probably, and you will see that it's increased slightly from 48.5 billion to 48.6 billion in the year 2020-2023, sorry. And then you would see that the fuel levy remained unchanged. The cost to income ratio remains unchanged at 22%. This is another number that we are trying to drive down as much as possible. When we started, this number was sitting somewhere around 40%. So 40 rands in each rand, 40 cents went to costs. So we are driving that down. You can see that the short-term debt has reduced this year by 10.75%. And you would see that our investment income increased by 145% from 286 million to about 697. So if you look at what we pay for funeral benefits, at least this can easily be covered by the interest or the investments, the income that we make. Cash and cash equivalent at 815 million, and the total claims expenditure. You see, people think that the RAF is paying less and less. There's no truth to that. We'll prove it, because we have paid in the last year 45.1 billion. Some of it, of course, to legal and illegal foreigners. And we will elaborate on that as well as we move forward. Next slide talks to the operational performance. You would see that claims registered 79,000.
And we come out of that briefing there, coming out of Centurion. That is the Road Accident Fund CEO, Collins Letswalo, and of course the Road Accident Fund speaking on measures to get the fund's house in order. And this is as the fund also grapples with systematic issues, including private interests who have been shut out from milking the institution. Of course, we need not even rehash the plight of many South Africans as we're having this conversation around how they even grapple with the payments of their loved ones, particularly when it comes to the front of the Road Accident Fund.